Welcome to episode 2 of the Kingvivor podcast. This episode we are covering the 2 swaps of the season from Final 16 to Final 12. I have here with me 2 production members, Chill and VG, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Yo, I'm VG. I kind of hosted the last episode, but tonight I don't really have the energy. So shout out to Kingstyn for being one of the hosts tonight's episode. And yeah,
And I'm Chill. I don't really know why we have to keep introducing ourselves. Everyone knows who we are.
Okay, well, in case I don't know your voices, I want to do it.
all right.
So we leave the Trap Queen tribal onto a swap of 2 new tribes, and we see a majority OG Nauta on the new Deriva, and a majority OG Deriva on the new Nauta. What do you guys think of this swap?
So I think the swap is really interesting, right? So we break down kind of the tribes. Nada gets what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players from OG Nada literally end up on Deriva with it's a crazy split, right? It's unbelievable. I mean, that's just pure luckiness. And then on the other tribe, you have Alexis, you got Big T, you got so that is 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you have all big names. Like these are all big players on everyone's tribe. And I feel like it's an interesting dynamic because you have a lot of Deriva on Nada, and you have a lot of Nada on Deriva. So I feel like coming into this, I feel like everyone's kind of questioning how tribe lines are going to come into play, and I feel like we'll get to it. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know. The swap was kind of underwhelming for me. Obviously, you want things to be more like spicy. You want to see more drama. Like a lot of these players, that swapped in a favorable position didn't have to really do much or try hard. A lot of players in this episode kind of went inactive once they saw they were safe. But for me, the big entertaining part was seeing how Malachi and how Keon would react because they were the sole member from the original tribe on each tribe. So that was my big thing to look out for.
Right, and I think Malachi and Keon are in an interesting position at this point because they can either become proactive and become in the best position as like this swing player, or they can, kind of fall behind and become this easy first boot. And as we'll see soon, both of them kind of take different routes, I'll say.
I think Kyle kind of talks about this in his confessional that he would prefer to be in Keon's position because him having 5 OG Nada kind of sees them as a group together, connected. And on a tribe of 7, tribe of 8, that 5 is majority on a tribe of 8. So that is 5 OG Nada on one tribe. And on Deriva, you have Big T, you have Alexis, you have Miguel, and you also have Maki, who is 4 OG Deriva on one tribe. So for them, I feel like majority definitely comes into play with tribe lines, which we will see people take different strategies on that, which we'll get into later. But Kyle kind of talks about he wishes he could be in Keon's position because of being in a position where there's only one of you. While you could be seen in the minority in the bottom, it's kind of this position for you to be able to play the middle. With having 3 Casco and 4 Deriva, you're kind of put into this position where you can kind of play either angle or both sides and build strong connections, which Kyle kind of seems a little threatened by Keon if he does do this. And I think Keon does do a good job on the time he has on the tribe to kind of build these connections and bonds. That OG does not get to make that early on. So I feel like Keon definitely can use this to his advantage for sure, and I think we see him do it as well.
Yeah, Keon definitely aimed to do it. I mean, he had a VCF with us not too long after, and he was aiming to kind of be the swing vote. But he also in this episode talks about wanting to target certain players. I think this is the episode that he mentioned he didn't really like Big T and how Big T was really annoying him. So, once he said he didn't like Big T, he was talking about trying to figure out ways to go after Big T. He also mentioned wanting to go after Miguel. So, while his initial thought process of playing the middle was correct, there's a chance that he could have overplayed his way out of the game by going on a power trip that he didn't have. He wasn't in power. You know what I mean? So that was my big issue with with how he was playing to start, at least within that episode.
We can touch a little more on this swap Naruto tribe and get back to the tribe later, because as we do see, the swap Deriva tribe loses that challenge and goes to tribal. Um, I think the swap Naruto tribe has an interesting dynamic because obviously you have these OG Deriva connections, but a lot of these OG Deriva players at this point are kind of on the inactive side. Like
Mm-hmm.
Big T, Maki, Miguel, they're all not really doing much. And it's only really Alexis is working hard with these new players to connect to the other side. And it's this kind of inactiveness for most of those people that I think a Big T vote, for example, could work actually. Like we see from Panda in his CF that he doesn't enjoy Big T either. He
Mm-hmm.
sees Big T as someone who's ignoring him. And so I think this lack of charming from most of these OG Deriva players could like have one of them go home. And it's not like the other swap tribe where the OG Nata have a 5-3 majority. It's a 4-4. All it takes is one flip, maybe from like an Alexis, for one of them to go home.
Right.
Should we get to swap Deriva then?
So swap to Riva, we kind of see, Kyle's still in the exact same power position that he was in on his OG tribe, still at that number one power ranking spot because, he's in the middle of these two developing sides. Three of his OG tribe mates want to vote Cody, while Cody, along with Mickey and Newbie, some of the Cascos want to vote Marina. So Kyle, he's much closer to Marina. Like as we kind of see through this whole pre-merge, which we'll get to, is that Kyle and Marina are a duo. Like they are each other's number ones, and it's in Kyle's best interest to keep Marina safe, and Marina's best interest to keep Kyle safe. So through this, he kind of thinks the vote would be easier. There's easier votes than doing Marina, for example. He's smartly painting Marina is kind of smartly painting Cody as unloyal, which eventually Marina actually gets Cody out, which we will get to. But Marina, she doesn't have as much power as Kyle, but she really is, I feel like, one of the stars on this tribe for sure because she wants Cody gone, paints him as a liar to Mickey and Newbie, and literally gets them to flip against him eventually, which we'll get to the Cody vote later, but spoiler alert, I mean, she pulls it off to 6-1. So clearly she's doing a pretty well job. Not pretty well, like a pretty good job. And Mickey, I mean, Mickey as well is also, he, these two episodes, I feel like he's kind of in that third spot, the middle spot. He has some connection in Marina and Kyle. He kind of gets persuaded by the Marina lie that goes around that Kyle and Marina kind of talked about basically Cody leaking some things that Mickey and Newbie were saying, and in reality, it was actually Kyle and Marina kind of leaking it, but they believed Cody was leaking it, which wasn't the case. And then I think Anthony and Newbie are kind of in the middle. Cody tries to play the middle a little bit, feels it out, but originally wants to keep Malachi, by the way. Doesn't
Yeah.
vote for Malachi, though, because the numbers aren't there for Malachi, but Malachi potentially could have stayed, actually. And Luna, unfortunately, Luna wasn't really around that much, so I can't really say much about Luna, but kind of Marina's sheep a little bit.
I kind of want to touch on Malachi a little bit. Obviously, this tribe ends up losing the challenge. They end up going to tribal. But with Malachi, like Kingstyn, I know you pointed this out a time or two before, but Malachi didn't do a good job of connecting with Marina. And Marina was someone that, for me, I felt like could have been like an advantageous part of Malachi's game or key game plan for him staying, because like Marina came into this first swap like actually not liking Anthony or Cody. Like there was fractures within this like group that was all together, and Malachi didn't really do the best job of connecting with the people in power, because if Malachi realized like the fractures that they had within this within that post swap alliance, he would actually be able to like integrate a lot better and target the people that Marina wanted to target. But because Kyle smartly put the target back onto Malachi, Marina was left with less of a option to go for Cody and Anthony.
Yeah, and I think I forget which one of you said it that Marina was the star of this tribe. I actually really agree with that because while Kyle was the person out there kind of getting all these people to trust him so much, he was going right to Marina with all this information, and almost sometimes it's more of a powerful position because it's less risky. You're not making yourself a big target. You're not burning people by voting them out. But you're getting just as much information,
Mhm.
and I think it's this dynamic of Kyle and Marina that kind of sets the tone for this tribe. Um, and I agree with you talking about Malachi. He said in the CF that he isn't able to really like assimilate with who he's talking to. He's not good at like talking with people who are different personality than him. And I think this is the reason why he goes here because, like I said, Marina was probably in the most power, almost the most power, and because she didn't trust her, feel that Malachi was someone worth keeping, he went. So
And I'd like to defend my boy Malachi too. I think he's a great player, and it was just a very tough position for him to play from. But the thing is, like, he was working. Cody wanted to keep him, and Malachi knew that. But Cody had a real false sense of where or how much power he had within this tribe because he assumed he had Anthony, and they thought they only needed a certain amount of votes to actually vote out Luna, which ended up happening. Malachi would end up voting Luna. And again, is another reason why Marina was so against it because Marina was extremely close to Luna at the time. So there was fractures within this. There was possibilities and fractures within that OG tribe, but it just ended up not working out with the fact that Marina wanted to go for Cody and Anthony initially. Um, and Malachi also, depending on Cody and Anthony for votes, at least from his perspective, it just ended up not working out.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out because I do think Malachi is a great player and someone I would love to see play again. But I think he was kind of in position with tribe dynamics. I mean, him being one of the only OG Deriva, the only one from his OG tribe who got swapped into this situation. I feel like he did get swap screwed a little bit. I feel like he did what he could with the situation he had. I do think it was a smart move to take him out for competition reasons, but I still do want to give a shout out because I mean the man had an hour on the first challenge and was still able to stay. So clearly he does know what he's doing. He's a good player. I think it was more so a case of just the OG Nada wanted to stay together, not pissing off the OG Casco because we see Kyle and Marina kind of discuss this is that Malachi makes more sense because by voting um this way they keep Mickey and Newbie kind of intact. They're not really pissing off OG Casco, which is smarter for their game because if they vote one of them, you have the other person mad at the other. So you essentially have to vote out both if you're gonna vote out one because you're burning a bridge with both members because Mickey and Newbie are kind of close with one another. So I think strategically it makes the most sense for them this episode to do Malachi. It's just a shame to see him go so soon for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like with Malachi, me and Kingston had talked about this. It's like with him, his best chance was immediately connecting with the people in power. He just didn't know who was in power.
Yeah.
Like once his
yeah,
name, once they were settled on him being the boot, there really was nothing he could do differently. Like genuinely nothing. I've ran it in my head multiple times. Like there's nothing he could have done. The people he needed also were the ones that were going against Marina or the Marina was against them. So it wouldn't have worked out. Like genuinely there was no combination of votes that would have been enough to save him. His best bet was, all the work beforehand. And I think if I remember correctly, that was Valentine's Day weekend. So I think he was busy and just missed out on those connections. And it was just like the perfect storm that led to his boot.
yeah. And I was gonna add just one final thing. That's kind of similar to what you just said. There definitely were cracks. It's just he didn't know what the cracks were, and he ended up like connecting with the people that were not in power. I think if he would have locked in with Marina, locked in with Kyle, we definitely could see a Cody boot there instead of him.
Or an
It's
Anthony
just
boot.
We absolutely could have seen a Cody or Anthony boot for
I
sure. I
don't I
think
don't
that's
know, maybe an
Cody.
Anthony boot, more so Cody in my opinion.
I do think so. I think Kyle would have looked out for Anthony for sure. I just think
Mhm.
Marina definitely would have at least tried to push it or insinuate it. And again, that notion right there is enough for Malachi.
One other thing I wanted to bring up was kind of the power dynamics on the other tribe for episode 3 specifically. Um, there's obviously a jump, but one person who actually is in power and kind of well positioned on this tribe is Keon. Keon's kind of in a great position, and someone else who's also in a great position is Alexis. Once again, Alexis is in the number 2 spot for power rankings. Um, you know, not only is Alexis in a great spot, but we also see Chun Li, Issa, and Panda. Issa and Panda are kind of in a middle position, being the Cascos. With Chun Li, Issa, and Panda, we kind of see them form a trio. This episode specifically is having a group between them to kind of basically an agreement. I think through this episode, we kind of get this notion that tribe lines are definitely going to come into play. Um, which is the reason we do kind of do swaps this season. And I think we'll talk about that is to kind of, with a season with no idols and no advantages, tribes are obviously going to come into play a bit, but we're trying to minimize that as much as we possibly can. But we do see the creation of a Chun-Li, Issa, and Panda alliance. And if this tribe did lose potentially, I definitely think, like Kingstyn was stating, that Big T or Maki could have gone home for sure.
Yeah, and to touch on the swaps, like we planned the season ahead of time, like how many tribes we'd have, when we'd swap, and on paper we wouldn't have these OG tribe line problems, but these swaps of like a whole tribe sticking together in the swap is really unfortunate, and I think that's why later on we're gonna have these OG tribes come up.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys say? You guys are ready to move to episode 4 or anything else?
I am.
I am.
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, now we
Well,
move on to episode 4, where we see the OG or the swap Deriva lose again, and we see Cody go home. And I'm really excited to talk about this episode because this honestly might be my favorite episode of the season so far. I think we see a masterclass of gameplay from Marina. Basically, what goes down is we see the OG Casco duo Mickey and Newbie try and pull on Cody, which is successful because, as we saw from last episode, Cody has in this position where he wants to flip. Um, and then they try and bring in Kyle, someone who we know is in a very good and middle position, so he can really go wherever he wants. Um, and whenever they try and bring in Kyle, we see him immediately go to Marina and talk about what's going on, kind of leaking everything. As we said, that Kyle is Marina's info gatherer. Um, and what's interesting is, little do Mickey and Newbie know, as they throw a name to Kyle, Marina, they don't know that Kyle and Marina are so locked in, and so Kyle immediately goes to Marina, leaks that Marina's name is out, blah blah blah. And instead of saying Kyle leaked it, she blames it on Cody. And so Mickey and Newbie are in this position where, can I trust Cody? They just flipped on us, they're leaking information, and it's that catalyst event that I think really sets up this tribal.
yeah, absolutely. I think this episode definitely feels like Marina's episode and Kyle's as well, but specifically Marina because while Kyle may have more power than her, I mean, this episode was kind of hers. She's wanted Cody gone. She mentioned she wanted Cody gone, and I think it's strategically smart for her to kind of get a nod out because then it breaks up this whole 6-person Nada, especially 5-person Nada majority alliance. So it looks like they're not as close as they are. Because if they were to send a Newbie or Mickey home potentially, it really kind of gives off the hint that like they are planning to stick together and that this is a strong force to be reckoned with tribe wise. So heading into a future swap, not knowing when that could be, which it actually is the next round. So this move kind of pays off, is it kind of sets them up for success because it kind of allows others to be like, okay, like people aren't really playing Tribelines that much because Marina decides to vote Cody for potentially trying to play the middle, and she gets everyone on board through the leak that kind of started up. That I think you mentioned a little bit, Kingstyn, which gets Mickey and Newbie on board, and Cody goes home in a 6-1 vote.
I was originally skeptical of Marina's gameplay the episode before, and I purposely glossed over it because I wanted to touch on it this episode. There was a lot of talk of potentially Cody going home the episode before until it was decided that it would be Malachi. And I always thought this was a better move for Marina to vote out Cody because of this exact reason. Marina, for some reason, didn't want to pull the trigger on a Cody boot because she was scared of looking like a tight knit foursome with the other OG Nada members. But for some reason, voting out Malachi, she wasn't scared of the fact that they would come off as a tribe strong alliance. And I don't know if you guys remember, from this same episode, I think it was Keon who was saying like he was kind of worried about them all sticking together and being picked off if they go to tribal because of that exact reason, because it's just how they they're viewed as like staying tribe strong and whatnot. So she definitely this episode fixes all that skepticism that I had from the episode before by actually going through and getting rid of Cody.
Yeah, for sure. And it was interesting to see her say that and then vote Cody off the next round. But I think an interesting thought that maybe we didn't like glossed over whenever this happened was maybe because if they do vote Cody instead of Malachi that first round, do they tell Malachi, Mickey, and Nubi that they're voting Cody? I don't think so. And so it'd end up being a potential like 4-3-1 vote or 4-2-1-2 vote or something.
Why
And
would they
in
not? Why
that,
would they not tell? Why would they not tell them though? Wouldn't that make them more like
see,
like a tribe fluid,
I
full of
think
allies?
I think if they tell them they potentially tell Cody, get him to flip with them, and it becomes a 4-4. And I think they might
I
have
guess
been
that's a
scared
good
of that.
point. Yeah, that is a good
And
point.
Yeah.
so I guess it's kind of risky. And then if they do pull off that 4-3-1 vote to the other people on that swap tribe, they're going to think, okay, those 4 people are a faction. And they're really tight if they're going to pull a move off like this. And so maybe
Mhm.
that's where she was coming from.
This episode wasn't this episode newbie talked about what was like a 2-2-1, 3-2-2 or some crazy
Yeah,
shit.
that was crazy.
I just wanted to put that out there. I forgot what that, but we kind of see Newbie doing a little craziness this episode as well, which kind of loses Kyle's trust a little bit. But I think with that intact, yes, Maria does pull off the move and she gets her program, which is impressive and definitely a resume move for her. But on the other side of things, on Nada, we kind of see a power shift actually. We see Chun Li take the top spot on the tribe um, because everyone on this tribe kind of trust him because the non OG Deriva side of the tribe like fully trust him, values his opinion. He has great connections though with Miguel and Maki specifically, which pretty much covers everything that he kind of needs to do to ensure his safety. Um, one thing that's hinted at this episode that will be brought up later into a future swap is he's threatened by Keon and thinks Keon's
Yes.
a social threat, which we will talk
Hmm.
more about that in the future. But Keon, while he is still not the number one spot anymore, he's still in a great position taking the number two spot. The only person who really sees him as a big threat is Chun Li at this moment for being a social threat, but he's still doing pretty well. And then we have Issa, who she's been pretty under the radar of this tribe. But she's also notably catching on to Keon a little bit, not nearly as much as Chun Li, but does catch on to seeing Keon as like a social threat potentially. Um, the thing that shifts a lot this episode though is Alexis's influence. So Alexis for the first couple episodes was in the power spot and it was like undebatable. Like Alexis had control of OG Deriva, and Alexis was in a great position on episode 3 of OG Nada, on the swap tribe of Nada. Now it's at the fourth spot though. We kind of see Alexis in the middle spot of this tribe. Um, she's well trusted by her whole entire tribe. Uh, but other than that, not really from the newer members. And then we kind of see Panda and Miguel in these middle spots. Nothing really changes at the bottom spot because Big T and Maki, like we talked about, if they were to lose, would have been the one potentially going home on this swap tribe.
So I actually have a question for you guys. And
Mhm.
it kind of relates to what you were talking about with Chun Li and how he feels threatened by Keon. Because I was in that VCF as well, and I do remember him saying that. But I'm also noticing a trend with Chun Li. Chun Li has like this detector for like social games, and he feels very threatened by someone with a good social game. He's mentioned it before with like Issa. He's mentioned it multiple other times. I just can't remember exactly when, but I know he's mentioned it a lot. Do you think this is going to be something that like could hurt him or help him in the future of this game?
I think it's a very risky, like, I can tell Chun Li's a very big game player. He wants to snipe threats when he can. He's not like someone to wait for the right move. He's someone like proactive, I'll say.
Mhm.
And I think if he does it right, it will be really good for him. Taking out threats whenever he has power. At this point, he has a lot of power, and so he's like, why should I keep Keon around? I want to be the main guy here.
Mhm.
Um, and also, he doesn't want Keon in a mercenary, so I think this proactiveness from Chun-Li will help his game overall.
But at what point does, and Chun-Li is a very social player himself. But at what point, if he does successfully take out all these social threats that he wants to take out, and he mentions that he wants to target, at what point does he become the biggest social threat? And this is a season that's been, relatively flat in terms of obviously advantages, but people are looking for reasons to vote other people out. The people have been cagey, people have been cautious. So if Chun-Li does pull off a big move and takes out one of these social threats, is he gonna be the biggest threat? Like, is that really helping his game by not keeping the social shields in front of him? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean, and it's also that Keon does trust Chun-Li a lot at this point, and so he
Right.
could use that to his advantage. Um, I don't know. I think it could go either way. I think there's a very fine line he could walk if he does it correctly. That he can take out Keon, still have these other threats in front of him where he's not the number one. Um, but yeah, I think maybe it's just he was kind of bored because he hadn't been going to tribal for a couple rounds. I don't know.
It's just a trend I noticed, and I wanted to kind of get your
I
thoughts on
think
it.
my kind of take on it is I think it's a skill of Chun-Li's. I think Chun-Li definitely has a great read on the game so far, but all of Chun-Li's reads aren't exactly perfect. I think we do see Chun-Li have a lot of great reads, especially with Keelan being threatened as a social threat. He mentions Mickey being a social threat on his OG tribe, which he was correct about. I think for Chun-Li, I think while he does see these people as threats, I do think it is in his best interest to keep at least a couple threats around so he can further himself in this game. Because if you remove all these threats and all these big players, big social threats, people are going to start looking at him as the threat. You know what I mean? Like, you have to
Exactly.
find this balance and you have to
Hmm.
know when to strike and when to lay low. And I think it's a strategy a lot of people try and use at times. But if you take out all these big names at first, you're going to become the big name and you don't want to
Hmm.
become. So you need to keep around these players. You can cut off some, but you need to make sure you still have a couple so you can advance as far as you can to eventually win this game. So I'm curious to see Chun-Li's strategy on that, of him highlighting these social threats. But when's he going to make the move? When's he going to take the strike? And we'll actually see a little of that into our next swap if we're ready to move on. But I don't know if you guys have anything else to add on episode 4.
Well, if you guys are ready, then we get on to the second swap of the season and ultimately the last swap of the season, where we see two tribes of 7 form. Um, Looking at this cast list, we get a no OG Deriva on swap Deriva, and we have all of OG Deriva still together on this swap Nacha tribe. What do you guys think of this 4 OG Deriva sticking together? Like, what do you think this says to their games? Because sure, you are having these like connections from past tribes that could help you, but you're overall not meeting a lot of people as we come to merge. Like, what do you guys think?
So I think I'll just start with the swap 3 Nada. I find it really interesting. I mean, it's incredibly lucky to have all 4 of your members end up on one tribe. I mean, having Alexis, Big T, Maki, and Miguel all be together is incredibly lucky. And, I'm glad that we do see some gameplay, though, where they don't actually all stick together. So we have a 4-2-1 split on this tribe. We have 4 Deriva, we have 2 Nada, and we have 1 Casco, that being Mickey. Um, the other side, we see 3 Casco, those being Chun-Li, Issa, and Panda, and we have 3 Nada, uh, no, 4 Nada, and 0 Deriva. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic for sure. Um,
No, we actually see 4 OG
4, you're
Casco.
right.
Yeah,
4
with
Casco,
newbie,
4
newbie
Casco,
and panda.
and 3. So we have a 4-3 split on that tribe and a 4-2 on the other tribe. So I feel like the dynamics are definitely interesting and to see who wants to play by tribe lines and who doesn't. So, like Kingstyn said, we can't, and Chill as well, we intentionally kind of planned this season to have as many swaps as we could, finding a balance to try and split up tribe lines. So people didn't feel too inclined to stick with their OG tribes. And while I do think on a season with no advantages and no idols, we do find that kind of unfortunately takes a little bit of a play here. I think the whole goal is for people to play it safe. But yeah, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on these swap tribes? And yeah.
I like how it played out, honestly. For the most part, we're seeing big names being thrown out initially. Obviously, we have some of what happened last episode leak into this episode with Chun Li wanting to take a shot at Keon, and then you also have Mickey's name being thrown out from what happened with the episode prior with Marina. So this episode starts off hot with big names being thrown around. I actually kind of like it so far with how the swap turned out.
I will say this swap over on Swap Deriva for the swap. I think it's interesting to see like Anthony, Luna, and Keon, people who like. Sure, Anthony and Keon had this pre-swap connection, but they haven't seen each other for a while. And Luna's kind of this nothing burger of a game player, so it's what in my mind was going to happen was that three OG Naota wasn't going to stick together, and we'll get into tribal in a bit, but we do kind of see it happen. So um before we get into tribal, should we talk this challenge? We don't see a tribal immunity challenge, we see an individual one, and we have a double on this round. What do you guys think of this challenge? Do you guys think anything interesting happened? Like, obviously, we see Mickey push every single tribe
So
mate
we
he
see
has off, and do you guys think that he needed to do this? Like, there were some shockwaves. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was a great move for Mickey to do that because we see that if Mickey doesn't win this challenge, he's fully fucked.
Yeah.
Marina wasn't out. Kyle's inclined to vote with Marina, so Kyle's okay with voting Mickey. And the four OG Deriva are pissed off at Mickey as well. They just generally don't like him too much, especially with him pushing everyone off the boat. So, I feel like he definitely makes some enemies this episode, but I feel like it was the right move because Marina was already planting seeds about Mickey. So I feel like if he didn't have this necklace, we fully would have seen a Mickey boot this tribal, which actually leads to a fun tribal later on. And on the other side of things, we have a little showdown between Chun-Li and Keon for immunity. Uh,
right.
they went at it, and I think Chun-Li won by like 1 or 2 points. So it was a very close battle for sure. And
No,
Chun-Li was
Chun-Li actually pushed Keon off.
yeah.
oh, you're right.
he-
Aw.
Chun-Li was definitely playing defense. He really wanted to ensure that he won just because he didn't want Keon to win. Like he
Mhm.
really wanted to take that shot at Keon.
Yeah, I think we'll get to the whole Keon thing, but Chun-Li does actually try and take a shot at Keon this episode through a blindside move, um, which unfortunately someone gets striked out, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But on the other side of things, we also have Deriva. Um, that's a four-person majority right there. You know what I mean? Technically, Marina and Kyle originally on this tried to think they could be fucked. You know what I mean? Like just split up the Nadas. You know what I mean? Kyle and Marina boot could make sense. Get those numbers down on OG Nada from 5 to 4, and Kyle and Marina, one of them could go home. However, with their social ability, we see. I think this is where I'm most impressed with Kyle and Marina is these couple rounds. Is that they're able in a 4-2-1, able to pull off both ensure both of their safety in such a critical moment right before merge. Um, Big T actually wants to make a move. This is kind of Big T's kind of episode a little bit through voting off one of his own, Maki, to essentially he doesn't really feel good with Maki as much. And I think it's also he's thinking long term. And so are his other tribe mates, because he's know Marino would be inclined to vote Maki as well as another option besides Mickey is Big T kind of realizes, well, if I go in with three members of my OG tribe, and he has a really tight knit group with Marina, not Marina, Alexis and Miguel, he's able to go and emerge with a less threat on his back and a lower threat level on his entire tribe's back because there's only three of them now compared to four as a strong group. So he kind of shows that he's not willing to just play tribe lines, and his tribe mates kind of get to show it as well through Alexis, and it ensures Alexis's safety and Kyle and Marina are also safe. So I think it was a really interesting travel for sure. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts.
Big T had a great episode. I mean, I don't want to like just piggyback off what you said, but I was really impressed with how Big T played this, and not only just this episode, but ensuring that he's set up long term as a needed and important vote. And I think that's something that needs to be touched on because it's all about setting yourself up for the merge and how you're viewed and how you'll be targeted. And Big T, through his VCFs and episode after episode, he's a big personality. We all know that, but his biggest thing is keeping threats and targets in front of him. And this is just an excellent display of not only getting someone that he's not too close with out, but also showing like, hey guys, I'm not a big threat. I'm willing to work with just about anyone. And then on top of that, as far as like OG tribe lines or OG tribe numbers, we don't have the most. So, why not use us?
Right, and I just want to say I was so wrong about Big T. I was Big T's number one hater in that pre-swap portion. I thought he wasn't playing the game. I thought he was just, this kind of like one-dimensional character. But I think I'm really appreciative of Big T this episode. We really get to see into his psyche and his strategy, and he's got some brains into that skull of his. Um, I'm also, as you guys said, really impressed with Kyle and Marina. We see in the swap before this one, they successfully play from the top, getting Malachi out, getting Cody out. And it's interesting to see this swap that they're also successful from playing from the bottom. And I think this adaptability in their games that is really going to help them long term.
I always say that the best players, they find a way, and I think Kyle and Marina were able to
Hmm.
find a way, which is why to me, I really think one of them has a great shot at winning this game. I think I'm more so higher on Marina right now. While I think Kyle maybe Primo just played a better game than Marina. I think the issue with Kyle is that he's setting himself up to be a bigger threat long term. Where I think Marina
Right.
is making it a little better, which puts Kyle in a weaker position. But I definitely do not want to downplay Kyle's game at all because I think he's playing an amazing game so far. And that duo of Kyle and Marina, I think it's such a fun duo to watch together with them playing through from being at the top and then from being at the bottom. They were able to overcome the odds. So I'm extremely impressed with how they're able to accomplish it. Um, I definitely want to give another shout out, like you guys said, to Big T as well, because Big T, his whole strategy coming into the season was to play dumb. And, it's a risky strategy, right? Because, downplaying yourself as much as you can, but then knowing when to play up and be aggressive. It's all about taking those rounds to kind of come out of the shadows and then, simmer back into the shadows. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
the game is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You know what I mean? One round doesn't just define the entire game, but there are rounds that can help you kind of achieve your goal of making sure later on that you have a say and making sure that you can define your own game by potentially winning it. The goal is to win. So I think it's a really strategically smart move on Big T's end to vote out Maki, someone who he was kind of iffy on in general. Kind of cuts off this whole tribe line narrative, and it shows that like they are all willing to play the game. He's willing to play the game, and I think it builds a lot of trust with Kyle and Marina by willing to save both of them. And he successfully manages to lower his threat level a bit as well. So great move on his end. And yeah, I mean,
I
if he gets a
think Big T pretty much played this round how I thought Marina was gonna play the round with Malachi. This is how I thought Marina should had played it that episode. Obviously, she cleaned it up by getting rid of Cody the round after, but this is exactly what I thought was peak gameplay and peak setting yourself up for a potential merge down the road.
Yeah, and I think the situation is just a bit different though because I don't think any of that OG Drigo Fort had a chance of flipping on the other, whereas there was a little fraction that OG not to 5 with Cody.
Mhm.
Um, and also, I just think Kyle and Marina were easier to pick up as allies. This really wouldn't have worked if Kyle and Marina weren't so proactive and let's work together, blah, 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 with these OG Drigo members.
Yeah.
Malachi wasn't as social with, say, Marina, Anthony, as Kyle and Marina were with
Mhm.
these OG Drury people. So I just want to make that distinction. Do you guys have anything else to talk about this Maki tribe, or should we head over to the other tribe?
I just one more thing. I think that's a great point, Kingston, is that I gotta give a shout out once again to Kyle Marina is that they were so proactive. The second they landed like on that swap tribe, they got straight to work about building social connections, which pays off because OG Deriva is willing to vote off one of their own to ensure both of them to be safe. So absolutely, I think they did a fantastic job this episode. We kind of see that, and yeah, for sure, I would definitely say that this definitely was the big T episode, though. And let's absolutely, if Jill, if you have anything else to add, we can move on to the other tribal.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get to this next tribal as there's a lot to unpack. And if you can't tell by my voice, it's definitely sarcastic.
So as we've set up the past few episodes, there's this kind of silent rivalry or one-sided rivalry with Chun-Li and Keon, and it comes to blossom here when Chun-Li's thinking in his head, perfect, I have a OG Casco majority, we're gonna get Keon out, and then at the last hour we see Luna actually gets expelled. What do you guys think about this Luna expel? Like, were you seeing it coming? Like, what?
I definitely can't say I'm surprised. Luna was obviously really inactive. I don't even know if she ever even came back. I think she just
Yeah,
fell off the face of the earth.
we're
And that
still
was
waiting.
yeah.
We're still waiting for a trust ring Kings, by the way.
Yeah, I think she legit like just dipped. Maybe she died of old age, who knows?
Right.
But look, I I saw it coming, but here's the thing. I Even though we were robbed of a really good tribal and a good move and a good player getting out, it's still very unfair to someone like Keon who's playing this game extremely hard to be booted over someone like Luna anyways. And honestly, it gives us more TV. It gives us a better post merge, more than likely when you don't have Luna there just taking up a spot. So, I'm upset that we were robbed of the moment, but I'm confident that the moment will be better down the road, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jill. It's obviously upsetting to see that Chun-Li's, big blindside on Keon didn't really pay off here. I feel like we don't need to go too in depth into it, considering it didn't actually happen, based to Luna's circumstances of receiving her third and final strike. I can't say I'm too surprised about this, considering she was at two strikes, I think by like what, episode 2 or 3. So like she was not
It's
doing the best
crazy.
early on. Um, you know, I definitely think on our end, Luna's definitely a regret in casting just because, her app definitely didn't really serve as we thought she was going to activity wise. Um, you know, it definitely sucks. We feel bad obviously about the whole situation with Chun-Li, Issa, Panda Newbie, like, but the thing I will say is that if they really wanted Keon out that bad, they could have thrown the next challenge before merge and
Right.
voted Keon out then. But they didn't.
Um, and we'll get to that now. And like you guys said, I'm really like I felt so bad for Chun Li that this didn't work out because he put so much work and effort into it. You guys, if you're reading his confessionals, he literally like step by step worked this out in his brain, and it was going to work perfectly. But an unfortunate expel happened, and I think we did, you know, the best middle ground. We didn't show any votes, so we didn't like reveal the blinds that was going to happen, but we also didn't do like a double because if we did do a double, because either way Luna was getting expelled, and we did go through with that Keon tribal, we would have to plan all the merge stuff like a couple days early, and we weren't really ready for that. So, um, but then we get into this next round, and there's actually one last round before we merge, and I think we were all expecting for Shanley to say, "Hey, we all just tried getting Keon out. Let's try again." So, what do you think happened?
This is interesting, right? Because for our next challenge, like you kind of broke down just now, um, I originally thought fully on that Chun Li and the OG Cascas were gonna throw and just be like, let's vote Keon out strategically. They kind of already wanted to plant a blind side on him. They're not fully aware if he fully knows, and they can just boot a Nada before merge. However, what happens is, through some poor challenge performances from some of the others, um, they win the challenge, and Keon is officially safe and headed into the merge. On the other side of things, though, who isn't safe is someone who pushed everyone off the boat the last episode, which was an aggressive strategy. Um, and I just want to say, like, I loved having Mickey on this season. Like, I thought Mickey was such a fun and cool character, and I really, really, really wanted to see him make the merge. It breaks my heart that he did not make the merge. He was such a fun character this season. He was super rootable, and I thought he would bring the entertainment and the drama. So it was definitely a big loss to see him go. But we kind of see this episode is nothing really crazy happens at this tribal council. The agreement is after Mickey kind of pushed and pissed everyone off by pushing them all off on the boat. You know, Kyle, Marina, Big T, Alexis, and Miguel are just like, fuck it. Mickey's the vote. And, Mickey does what he can, but unfortunately, Mickey does go in a unanimous vote.
I have a question for you guys. Obviously Mickey was a part of pushing Marina's name a few episodes before. Why do you think, I mean, is it just a testament to Marina's social game, or is there something else? Like, why do you think Mickey trusted Marina so much in this moment?
I think Marina is a fantastic player through these social connections. I feel like, you know, she says what she needs to say. She doesn't say too much exactly, but she has this kind of charm to build trust and kind of reel people in, which I find extremely impressive. Um, I think she's able to pull Mickey in just because I feel like Mickey kind of needs Marina more than Marina needs Kyle on this swap, especially. Like, I feel like Mickey kind of knows that he, after pushing everyone off the boat, is in a horrid position. So I feel like, from a gameplay perspective, it makes more sense for Mickey to kind of stick with Marina and Kyle, someone who they've been together for 2 swaps now. So 2 different tribes. So the idea of an Alexis vote, someone he doesn't find as active, makes more sense for his game. Unfortunately, though, with 3 Deriva left, I don't think they were willing to lose one more. So Big T, Alexis, and Miguel were kind of pushing for a Mickey vote specifically, and Big T and Kyle and Marina not really wanting to against the numbers. And Marina specifically has always wanted Mickey out for a little bit. Like we said, Marina was planting seeds about Mickey, and Mickey still trusted Marina to an extent, while Marina didn't give 2 shits about Mickey.
Right, and that's what I'm
And
saying.
I think that's so impressive. I think that's a great point, Chill. I think the only thing for me is I think Mickey had to lean in on Marina because he didn't have any options really on this tribe. You know what I mean? It felt like he had to work with who he could and not really who he wanted to on a tribe like this.
I don't think Mickey necessarily trusts Marina that much. If I remember correctly, I asked him this post tribal, after he got out, and he said he didn't really trust Marina that much. He just felt that he had burned the OG Deriva so hard. Like,
Exactly.
obviously, he had this kind of rivalry with Alexis. He didn't feel like he could trust Miguel that much. He kind of had a semi connection with BT, but it wasn't enough. And so I don't think it was really of choice working with Marina. I think it was of desperation. Because even though Marina and Kyle wanted Mickey out, they were kind of playing into it. They were like saying, "Sure, maybe I'll vote this way," while they're listening to him. None of the OG Deriva were really doing that, and I think it was like you said, VG. Just he had to go to someone.
My next question is, Kingston, who do you think Mickey could have even pushed? Let's just say Mickey performs bad in the pushing off the boat challenge. Is there anyone that Mickey could have pushed to avoid elimination? Or, I mean, was Mickey always just going to be cooked in this kind of situation?
I think he was always kind of going to go home. There was an avenue like we saw after he won that Maki could go, but I think the only reason Maki was able to go was because Kyle and Marina were so like, okay, for sure, let's vote Maki. I think if Mickey lost that challenge, they would more so be like, let's vote Mickey,
Right.
and because of that, I think he would go home.
What about if like Miguel in this where does Miguel fall in this tribe? I mean, would he is Mickey if Mickey pushed Miguel, would that have maybe done anything, or do you think no?
Are you saying like post Maki tribal?
I'm saying before even because once Mickey pushed everyone off the boat, then it really sealed him. Like he was already training to being the boot, but once he pushed everyone off, it was like if we go to treble again, it's 1,000% him, and there's nothing he could have really done to prevent that. With before this tribal, was there anything that Mickey could have done? Like if Mickey pushed Miguel by chance, would Miguel have gotten any momentum to go? Or I mean, because we know how insulated Alexis is as far as just like the tribe around and Big T, Kyle, and Marina. I mean, so it really only leaves Maki and Miguel. I mean, if Mickey pushed Miguel, would Miguel have gone or no?
I'm confused what you're saying though. Like,
Like,
I think he would
like,
push Maki over Miguel at the final 14.
got you. I'm just saying in general, like if he pushed Miguel, even post that boat challenge, but I guess it doesn't matter because at that point he had already pushed everyone off the boat.
And we do
So
see a little inclination from Big T that maybe he wants to vote another OG3 route with Miguel, but I don't think it was actually going to accumulate to anything because one, Kyle Marina won Mickey out so hard, and two, we have this low key duo between Alexis and Miguel, and I don't think Alexis would let Miguel go. And so I think Mickey really had nowhere to go, and he was going to go home either way.
I think
right,
Mickey was screwed. Like fully, like you kind of touched on Kingston. I think Mickey was fully screwed just because Alexis and Miguel fully trust each other, and Big T's kind of part of that group as well. And Kyle and Marina are a duo who have no interest in voting the other off. So Mickey
right.
was kind of a lone wolf on this tribe and didn't really have any other options to work with.
hmm
Well, does anyone else have anything to add about these tribals, or no? I think that's kind of everything on these swap tribes.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything. Should we move on to our thoughts on each of these pre-trade players? Because, well, besides Greeny and Trap Queen, of course, but we kind of went over the tribals, so we never really gave our thoughts about how they did this season. Should we go through each player? Or
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's
okay,
do it.
so let's start with Malachi. How do you guys think he did? Like, were your expectations met or what?
My winner pick. My winner pick has fallen. Look, I loved watching Malachi. Sure, he was a little more on the inactive side than what I was hoping for. But from like a strategy standpoint, from like a social awareness standpoint, he definitely knew where he stood. He still impressed me. Obviously, it was a very poor situation that he was in. I'm not gonna say that he fully got swap screwed because, like we talked about, he could have talked to people in power, and he just didn't really connect well with them, and that was his chance. So while he had a slim margin for error, he still could have done something. So I'm not gonna say he fully got swap screwed. But beyond that, I think he's a really good player, and I think he went far too soon, and it did kind of hurt his game that he got put in that situation.
Yeah, I think Malachi for me, I think Chill and I actually had a conversation about this before the first 24 hours of the game is, you know, Malachi was someone I really, really had high expectations for coming into this
Same.
season. I thought he would go a lot further. I think I predicted him second place actually, which was a massive loss. I saw complete potential in the guy. I thought he was a great player strategically and socially. I wish he was a little more active. I think he got a little swap screwed. I do think if you're that good of a player, though, like we kind of touched on, is that he could have got himself out of the situation by talking to the players who really had the power. I would have focused a little more on OG Nada, specifically in Kyle and Marina, and kind of connecting the dots of the power they kind of hold within the tribe, and really just trying to solidify a bond with them, which I think could have kept him safe a round or two. And it's unfortunate to see him go so early, but I was glad to see him play, and I'd love to see him play again.
Yeah, I really liked Malachi. Malachi is someone who, as soon as I saw apply, kind of like with you two in season one, I knew I'd want him on. It's just because I've seen him play in other orgs, I knew he was a great org player. And I think it was just unfortunate swaps, unfortunate timing with Valentine's Day because obviously we saw him that he wasn't able to be as active that day. Um, that ended up him in that position. Strategically, I thought he played really well. It's just socially there were some parts that I feel he could have done better on, but overall I really enjoyed him. So yeah. And also we have Toby here, who's been listening in this whole time, and he just told us that he wants to add in his thoughts on the preachers. So, Toby?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I've been just like listening, but like I just didn't have any much thoughts on the preacher because I have been paying attention. But anyways, I do have like some knowledge on some certain stuff, and that's why like I could like give you guys my thoughts on some of the players. I would say like when it comes to Malachi, I definitely like saw a lot of potential in him like preseason. He seemed to be like a very strategic person and a very like good player overall through based on his application that I thought that he was gonna go far, but unfortunately, I do believe that he got like swap screwed at the end of the day. Him being isolated with none of his OG members kinda made him an easy boots in the first swap. So I do believe that he kind of got like swap screwed. But like one thing I would say is I don't believe that he was very much social enough that he could have like prevented that he could have prevented his boot if he was social enough, but he just wasn't, and
Right.
yeah, that's led to him getting booted, unfortunately. But overall, I did enjoy him in the season.
Kingstyn, can we please put like a, you know how like in the old sitcoms, whenever like a special guest comes in out of nowhere, they do like the special applause, like they do like the applause where like the crowd goes crazy. Can we put that in when Toby started talking?
Chill, your age is showing.
Please, bro. I don't care. That's funny. I just want Toby to get his moment, all right? It's my guy.
Maybe,
Right,
maybe.
the special guest of the
The
podcast.
special
Yeah, yeah,
guest,
yeah.
bro. Yeah.
We'll see, we'll see, we'll see. We'll see what Editor Kingston cooks up. Okay, so after Malachi, we have Cody. What do you guys think of him this season?
Look,
Uh,
so I was pleasantly surprised by Cody because I'll be honest, and no shade to Cody because I love Cody, but like, I didn't see much from Cody the first time I watched him play. But Cody held his own. The thing is with Cody, and especially during his boot episode or the episode before, he kind of falsely or had like some false sense of where he stood with everyone. I think he thought he had a lot more power, and when he tried to actively go and save Malachi, I think that was pretty much the downfall of his game. He just didn't have a lot of control in the game when he thought he did. And that's, when people started looking at him, and especially even Anthony, someone who Cody thought was, really good with. Anthony was looking at him like, hey, if you're willing to make this move, but you have no numbers, like, what are you doing? And, so that's kind of the tale of Cody and how he played this game. It's like, he didn't have the numbers. He wanted to do it. He wanted to stand up for like what he thought was better for his game. He just didn't have the power to do so. So, and I actually like the fact that he was willing to do something different and stick his neck out on the line for Malachi, because I do think that him and Malachi could have been a good duo had they not been swapped into a poor situation.
So, I think Cody, first off, I just want to give a compliment to Cody by saying, holy shit, does he have some incredibly well done confessionals?
Hmm.
While I don't think his reads were perfect on everything, I think it was fun to see him kind of try and build this relationship with Malachi. Obviously, he decided to stay tribe strong and didn't go with this potential group of Malachi, Newbie, Mickey that could have been formed. It's interesting because Marina and Kyle kind of fucked Cody over a little bit by this leak that kind of was spread that originally might have actually kept Cody safe into the game by pissing off Mickey and Newbie, breaking up that group. Cody went out for apparently trying to play the middle. While that isn't fully necessarily true, we do kind of see him have glimpses and ideas of doing it. I think he was a good character this season. I think it's sad to see him go so early. I think he had some fun confessionals, but I don't think all of his reads were perfect. But Cody, if you're watching this, you have some amazing confessionals. Seriously, and thank you for playing.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that too. I applaud people who put so much work into those confessionals because, I've played orgs. I know how much of a chore they can be. Um, and it was just so much fun reading through them. And even though they were delusional at times, I will say, it was just the effort he put in with all the graphics and stuff. And they were long too. Maybe it's the like of people who answer confession questions might be the longest like answers. Um, but yeah, I think Cody has a problem that I've seen in other orgs where his social is just not that great. Um, in orgs, you really want to personify yourself with people. You want people to say, okay, that's Kingstyn the person, not Kingstyn the player. And I think he failed at that a few times this season. He just had very surface level conversations with people, and people didn't really see him as reliable long term because of that. So
I do agree with what most of you guys said. Like his confessionals were like obviously one of the best. When it comes to like confessionals, I do believe that you really need like the time and dedication to make it as good as like what Cody showed us. And this is like something truly enjoyed from his confessionals. But like game wise, I I'm gonna be fully honest. As much as I enjoy Cody as a person, I wasn't like a huge fan of his gameplay. His socials weren't as strong as the others from his tribe, which kind of didn't put him in the top of the power ranking like he thought he was. So yeah, like that caused him to like not have like a lot of strong connections with the other players, I believe, which is why like he was more of disposable to them later on, which shows like in this first swap. I will say this, like at the same time, like I do agree. I feel like Kyle and Marina did kind of mess him up a little bit by leaking what his plan was of keeping, I believe, Malachi during that round. I will say this, like yeah, Marina and Kyle did kind of mess him up a bit and set him up to failure, but like he wasn't like very much fully aware of his power in this game because like he
Yes.
kind of didn't have any, to be honest. So yeah, I would say this, like I truly enjoyed his confessionals, but like his game isn't like the strongest, basically.
yeah, I agree. All great points. Next up we have the infamous Luna, who went out in 14th place. What do you guys think? Or expelled in 14th place, I should say.
I'm extremely
Nothing.
disappointed. And, I don't really have anything else to add. That I'm just, extremely disappointed. I think I'll leave it at that.
One thing I'll give Luna is, if you're watching this, Luna, you have a great personality. I don't think you brought anything negative personality wise to the game. Like, you weren't negative about anything, but you weren't great gameplay wise either, and I'm sure you know. But one thing I will give Luna is she might top Gabe as worst player of Kingvivor so far, and she'll have that at least.
Yikes. Yikes. Okay, look, I'm gonna just say I'm gonna choose to be nice. Luna was kind of funny in her confessionals, honestly. Like her
Yeah,
confessionals were different. Her confessionals were different, but she was kind of funny, bro. The Chud Lee thing was kind of hilarious to me. Um, I don't know. Her confessionals were weird. They were like, but like I said, I'm going. We're nitpicking here. I don't want to keep saying the same thing you guys are all saying. Like, obviously, she was inactive, but I actually didn't mind her confessionals all that much.
I will say this, like when it comes to Luna, the only thing that's like is recognizable about her like overall is her confessionals. Like I don't get it. Like what are you like? I see like quotes or whatever like every single episode, and they are numbered. Like what? I never
Yeah,
saw that
I
before.
don't know the point of numbering it. I see what she's doing. She's doing like the whole like, like if she was actually on Survivor thing where she's acting like she was
Hmm.
talking. But you're right. I
Yeah,
don't really see the point in counting them.
but
It's
yeah,
kind
like
of weird actually.
that was funny to me. But yeah, like if we're talking game wise, unfortunately, she didn't like bring much to the table. She was more of a goat. She was like mostly used by people like Marina. Marina was aware of how inactive Luna is, and she knew like if Luna trusts her much, but she's inactive, she could like just bring her instead of taking her out because like it just didn't make sense for Marina basically, which is why like I feel like she was more of a follower to other players and she didn't bring much. That's what I'm trying to point out. Yeah, I don't have much thoughts. Like it was very unfortunate that she wasn't like active and that's why she got expelled at the end of the day. And yeah. that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. I just want to add one last thing. I think she was intentionally funny. She kind of gave me Angelina vibes in a sense, but like kind of less active or something. I don't know, like less screen time. In the sense that she was intentionally funny. Um, there was this one point where she was calling Chun-Li Chudley. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And it was also like she was saying to people on the round she got out, like, "OMG, please save me," or whatever, and all that just to not vote. And I thought it was kind of unfortunate. Um, but let's move on to Maki, albeit another player that we were kind of disappointed by. What you guys think of Maki?
You
Ooh,
know, I kind of
go
found
ahead.
Maki. I found him interesting. I like Maki as a person. I just found him a little delusional game wise. I think he thought that he had a bigger grasp on the game than he actually did. He thought he was kind of in the big dog, the top position, and he really wasn't. I think he was fun to have to an extent, but I don't think he was anything extraordinary for sure. I think he was just a little delusional, but I don't really have anything against him. I think he was a fun character at times, but I feel like he didn't really add too much to the season necessarily. I'm a little disappointed by how he did kind of play and how easily he kind of went out. I felt like he could have kind of connected the dots a little better. But, while I'm sad to see him go, I feel like there were more others who I'm rooting for a little more, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, what I'll say about Maki is they just struggle to make those deep connections with people. That was the most noticeable thing for me. I actually don't think their strategy was all that bad. It was more so just the fact that kind of similar to Cody, where like the head space is in the right spot, but the needed social bonds to do anything in the game, but just wasn't there. It always felt like Maki was someone who was just going to be expendable at some point. It was just a matter of like when, not if. And so that's all the notes that I really have on Maki, honestly. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and I agree with you both. I think the biggest downfall for Maki's game was, similar to Cody, he thought he was in a great position, but I want to give Cody credit here. Cody at least talked to people. If you go through Maki's one-on-ones, he's not saying anything to these people. He's saying like one message a day. And so I'm like, how do you
Right.
expect to not talk to people and be in such a great position? So I don't really know where his head, like his thoughts of I'm in a great position came from. Um, I do want to appreciate or thank Maki for stepping in to join the season last second. He was one of two reps this season, and I always have an appreciation for people who do that last second. Um, but yeah, he didn't bring much this season for me. He was the second most inactive person on the season, only behind Luna. Um, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't have like strong thoughts about Maki. Like I was excited for him to be in the cast. Like that's why I was like, I wanted to see how he plays, but because I did assume that, like based on what I know, like he was better in recent orgs. That's why I wanted to see what can a recent Maki do basically. But yeah, like I will say this. Unfortunately, like I didn't see much, and yeah, but like yeah, like I did enjoy him as a player, and I did enjoy like seeing some of his moments. He had a bond with Keon and Chun Li during the first swap, and they were on VC and they were having fun. I enjoyed I enjoyed that moment, but besides that, like I overall I just like didn't see much, unfortunately. So that's why like I just don't have much thoughts about Marky.
Okay, and lastly we have Mickey. And I want to start Mickey off because, as some of you all know, I loved Mickey this season, or as much as he played. Um, Mickey this season is everything I'm looking for as an orc host, and an orc player. He was super active, he was super entertaining, and super unpredictable gameplay wise too. And I think we're kind of missing that this season. and especially this merge, as we'll get to in future episodes. Just someone who's unpredictable, super active and entertaining. And so for Mickey, for me, was kind of like, I don't know, he kind of stood out in that way in front of everyone who's kind of just playing like an under the radar, long term good game, you know? And so it was really unfortunate to see him go so early and not make merge. But I really like Mickey. You know, at this point, if I had to choose someone right now for host fave, I'd choose Mickey probably.
Yeah, Mickey was a really big
Yeah.
personality, and they were really good. I think they did a VCF if I remember correctly, and it was just really fun. I want to say it was their first VCF they've ever done, and I believe I was the one that hosted it.
I sucks. I missed that. I can't lie.
Yeah, yeah, and it was just super fun. Like I actually really liked Mickey. I want to see him play again. Just an overall fun player. You know, they were definitely social. And yeah, there's just not much I could say that's different from what you said, Kingston, because I pretty much agree with everything you said. But I just wanted to say like I appreciated Mickey and just like the VCFs they did and good confessionals and just being an entertaining character.
I agree. Like when it comes to Mickey, like I enjoyed him from the get go. Like ever since he joined, ever since like the first episode, he was such a fun person to like spectate and see how he plays. And he was very much active. He was talking to almost everyone, and he tried. And yeah, like this is like what set him up at the start of the game. And same as the first swap, like the people didn't decided to like not target him in the first swap and look at someone like Cody and stuff. So I do believe like when it comes to Mickey, I just like did enjoy his gameplay because it was good. Like his social game was much there. I do believe when it comes to the swap, however, the second swap, it kind of like messed him up a little bit because he had to push people off the boat for some reason. And yeah, like it kind of like burnt some of the Deriva connections in there, which is why like that kind of like sets him up to like be the 11th boots basically. Yeah, like I'll be honest, like I said, like I haven't been spectating much, but like from what I saw from Mickey, he was truly like enjoyable, fun, and enjoyable to watch.
Well, yeah, but as you said with the pushing off the boat, he like we said earlier, he kind of needed to do that. So
Yeah,
Yeah, I think he was cooked before that.
well, let me give my thoughts on Mickey really quickly because I
Hmm.
personally, I really enjoyed Mickey. Out of everyone on pre-jury, I think he was my favorite player. I really, really wanted to see him make merge. I thought he was going to be a fun little villain coming into the merge, pissing everyone off. I thought him pushing everyone off the boat was aggressive, but I liked it. I liked him kind of taking that push, that risk. And I think, it bought him an extra round. It sucks that we couldn't have seen him make merge. I don't know how far he would have gone, to be honest with you. I do think he still gets sniped out pretty early. But I think he's just a fun character, on his OG Casco days, with him creating an alliance 1 hour into the game. And, with the Greenie vote, I thought he was a lot of fun. And the next couple tribals, we kind of see him as the underdog a little bit, who kind of narrows through the game, which I found him pretty impressive in doing so. I think his mistakes were pissing off the wrong people at the wrong times, and kind of he should have realized who was in power at certain situations. But I think he was a lot of fun, and I'd love to see Mickey play again for sure.
That's
yeah,
right.
and like with what you said, with we don't know how far he'd go in the merge. I think he would be that merge boot. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but we kind of see Mickey similar to Callum from season one, who was the merge boot of season one, and I think he would have had a similar fate to Callum. So
Do have one final thing to say. Like so, like when I think like the thing with me like saying that I do believe that Mickey could have been safe had he like not be like pushed or made it this aggressive gameplay was because I do believe like if Mickey just won the normal way and didn't push anyone off, I do believe that's like opens an opportunity to work with people like Alexis and Maki and he didn't like and it wouldn't like burn a lot of bridges basically like that's my thoughts about this. That's why like I do think like he could have survived had he not done that and just like ruined this whole Deriva relationship. by playing safe. Like if he played it safe, there could have been a chance. But I do believe that, yeah, like that's where I stand basically. Yeah. When it
Yeah, and
comes
I
to
think
this.
that's all really speculative because what did happen was so different, and so I don't think we'll really know what would have happened. But yeah, anything's
That's
possible.
true. That's true.
Does anyone else have any final thoughts before we
Nope.
finish this off?
I think I'm ready to end this. I think we're good.
BG's really waiting for Trader season 4 finale, so he's ready to get out of here.
Wait. Can we just do one more thing? I know VG's trying to get out. Can we just talk about maybe like the contenders of who could win? Heading into the merge, because this is like our first full like prediction pretty much heading into the merge, and we don't have to spend if VG, if you want to go first and dip, like maybe you could do that, but like I
Yeah,
actually am interested to
absolutely.
talk about
Why don't
that.
I do that and I'll leave? So my contenders personally right now are Alexis, Marina, Issa, Big T, and Kyle. Those are the five I think can win this game. I think all five have a chance. I think Kyle, I think out of the five, probably has the least amount of chance. Not because he's playing the worst game, and in fact, he's playing the best. I think his threat level, though, is going to become too high at a point where nobody's going to want to sit next to him at the end. I think players would rather take like a Big T or Marina or maybe even an Alexis or an Issa. You know what I mean? I feel like a Kyle is just too dangerous to take to the end. So unless he can comp out, and maybe he can, I guess we'll tune in to find out. But yeah, um, I'm gonna head out. Thank you guys, and yeah, I'll let you guys continue with contenders.
I just want to add to what he said. I do think Kyle is probably playing the best game out of anyone right now, but I do think he is also being kind of clocked as this like social threat, especially going into this merge. And I don't think, I asked multiple people throughout these VCFs who is like the biggest obstacle or who is an obstacle for you getting to the end. And a lot of these people have said Kyle. So I don't think he's someone that will be brought to the end if he wins out or if he starts, the game can obviously change, but if he starts winning out or winning some comps, or makes any drastic moves that benefit his game like drastically, then I can definitely see it. And I do think he's capable of pulling it off. But as currently stands, I don't think he's someone who makes it to the end. I think Marina is someone who's much better positioned socially. The thing about Marina though is she gets in these like modes where like she's like gunning for people really hard, and she does it subtly, but I also think like if she gets in her head about a particular player, she could definitely slip up and make a mistake that's not really better for her game. The player, and I'm kind of cheating here, but the player that I'm really, really enjoying now is probably Alexis the most. And I do think Alexis is someone who could probably make a legit run to the end because I don't really see, she's kind of she's social enough, but no one's really clocking her as a big social threat. And there's a reason why I said I'm cheating a little bit is because I had a VCF with Alexis, and I think I was the only one there. I don't know if you were there, Kingston, or not, but um,
I was there.
oh, you were there, yeah. And she just had a really good grasp of what it's gonna take to win this game. She had a really good grasp of what kind of game to play in a old school season. And she understands that people are trying to be cautious. She understands that she might have to plant some seeds that'll create some drama, but she wants to stay out of it. So, while I had this VC while we were in the merge already, um, I was very much impressed and wanted to include it here in this episode that, she just her mind for the game is levels more than I thought. And not because of her gameplay, but it's just so much easier to understand everyone's thought processes when you're just talking to them instead of reading like, thousands of words or paragraphs about gameplay.
And I want to add on with Alexis. Alexis is also my number one winner pick at this point, and I should preface this that we are recording this after the Final 11 tribal just happened, but we're trying to keep our thoughts as they would be before the merge. But I think Alexis is just going to be in a great spot. This goes back to the Maki tribal. Um, Voting off one of their own with Maki really just opens the door for Alexis, Big T, and Miguel to get into this under the radar hidden position. Because going into the merge, there's 4 OG Casco, 4 OG Nauta, and only 3 OG Deriva. Um, And on a cast where there are OG tribes are mattering so much, having the least amount, I think is going to help them tremendously. Um, I'm also really high on Marina. Like, as you were saying with Kyle, he's playing the best game. It depends what your definition of the best game is. Like, if your definition of the best game is having the most social power, having the most strategical power, then sure, Kyle will be playing the best. But I think long term, who is going to be playing the winning game, I don't think it's Kyle. I think he is, and like Isa, which I'll get to in a second, is going to get sniped late game, just because people see him as a threat. And yeah, and I think Isa as well, I know Vijay mentioned her, people are really seeing her, even her allies, as a huge under the radar threat. People are catching under her game really hard, and I think
Right.
she's going to get booted before Final Tribal. So, and also just one more thing, I want to add Big T. He's not the top contender for me, but if these big threats like Alexis, Marina get out before Final Tribal, I could see him sneaking in and win.
I actually was gonna throw in Big T as well. Like I said, his whole game plan in the pre-merge was to throw these bigger threats in front of him and give reasons as to why people should be targeted in front of him. And I think that's something that
Mhm.
definitely could prove to be fruitful. We've already seen him play that way, with the Maki boot. So I'm excited to see how he continues to play because he is a big personality. You know what I mean? And I want to see how that plays out. But Big T is definitely on my radar. I wouldn't put him over the first three we said at this point, but he's certainly someone who's in my top five and someone that I'm definitely on the lookout for.
Toby, do you have any contenders to this point?
Honestly, I haven't like being paid a lot, didn't pay a lot of attention to the recent merge. So I will give you like my thoughts like before heading into this merge because that's like the most of that's like I don't know how to explain it. But like yeah, like this is like most of the stuff or knowledge that I got from which is like pre-merge. But anyways, I will say this. I do believe Alexis has a very good chance to win. Like you guys just said, like almost everything I wanted to say. I do believe that with her getting rid of one of her Deriva members, kind of opened up a lot of opportunities for her going to this merge because since they were being seen as close during being like since they were being seen as close before this, since they were all together during the swap phase of the game. I mean, during the whole pre-merge phase of the game, I do believe that people like were looking at them because of it, you know. So her like voting off Maki proved that she can play. She does not play by tribe lines, which basically like makes her approachable to some others, basically. And I do believe she just has like a very good social game that's not a lot of people are like looking at her at the moment. So this is like she is definitely like one of the strongest contenders going to this merge. I will also add I don't know like what happened recently, but I do think like Issa is currently like someone who was not like being seen, who is not being seen like recently. I mean like right now going into this merge, because I don't know like her social game is like very strong. That most of her Casco members are really just trust her over each other, which is why like I do believe that if if they if we happen to have like a round where they would target at a Casco member, it would not be Isa. It would be other players than Isa, other Casco members than Isa. So I do believe that uh Isa is also like one of the contenders for me. Um, so I do see a potential in Big T winning, but I'm not really sure if he would be someone people would vote for, you know, because he seems to be like this. He seems to be really underestimated. I think underestimated. I think that I do believe that if he reached the final tribal council, people would prefer voting other players than Big T. So I'm not sure about Big T. But I do believe that his strategy going into this merge, which is him keeping the big targets in the game, would benefit him pretty well, which is because like he would basically like hide. He will basically like hide his covers basically, and not a lot of people will be seeing him. So that's something I do that makes me believe that he's a contender. Um, Marina is another person who I believe is doing really great socially. Uh, However, like I do believe that she has made like very good connections, and I do believe that she is active enough to um like basically like stand out to other people as like someone who would be able to win. So yeah, like these are just like my thoughts about the contenders going into this merge.
Yeah, I think we have similar names for our contenders. I just want to ask real quick, would you guys mind if we very quickly went over these kind of non-main characters? Because I think over the course of this episode, we've kind of been talking about the same people over and over, and I feel like we should just give our quick thoughts on players like Anthony, Newbie, Panda, Miguel, kind of. Like, would you guys be open with that real quick or no?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. If you want to just give us the player
Yeah.
and we can all go and just like talk about that specific player, I'm down for that.
Well, I think interestingly, I can kind of group these players in by pairs. I think Miguel and Anthony are in very similar positions going to this merge. They're kind of seen as the smallest threat of their OG tribe. You know, Anthony with OG Nauta, Miguel with OG Deriva, and I think they could see long runs in the game depending on if their allies gain power. But I don't really see if an avenue of if they could win this game. You know, Anthony hasn't been the most active. He's had some IRL things. Miguel obviously, unfortunately, has had this major IRL setback, which we're all praying for his dad, but it has affected his game, unfortunately. And I don't know, I just think people will kind of see him as more inactive. So,
Yeah, I mean, I can see them to both make deep runs in the game, but obviously their win equity is just not there, and I don't know if they'll necessarily have the social capital to make any win equitable moves in the game. So, no shade to them. They're kind of just there, and they're kind of just, they're just going to be players that fall into place. I mean, I'm not saying they won't be
mhm.
difference makers, but I just don't see a way where they actually do anything meaningfully enough to win.
I mean, honestly, I do have like a different opinion on this. I do believe that since they are not being seen as like big threats, it would be like perfect for them to not be targeted. Like for me, I do believe like there are players like Chun Li who probably have a chance to clock the fact that someone like Alexis is a really good social game player. So you might like put some eyes on, you might like plant some seeds about Alexis later on. It's just a speculation, but like I do believe like there are certain players who do notice those social and active players that they would like go against each other. Since Miguel and Anther are not in that category, they're kind of like middle of the road. I do believe that would kind of like not make them targeted later on. It would in fact like bring them far into this game. I do believe that they can potentially win later if they start getting more active. But as of
Mhm.
right now, I do believe that um, they are kind of like they are kind of inactive, that they are not going to be targeted soon. That's just like my
I,
personal
I mean,
opinion.
I think they can go far too, but I mean, what combination of final three would they have to be in to win? Like it would have to be like a very perfect combination of final three. I don't
Mhm.
even know if it exists. Maybe against each other, right?
I
It would
was gonna
have to
say,
be
I think it'd have to be
Hmm.
with each
it'd have
other.
to be it'd have to be with each other. It's just I don't know. I don't see a way where they win unless someone really really sucks at like their final tribal council speech.
And you know, we do
That
have a
is
lot of
true.
game to play, and things can change. But just basing off of this point, I don't see them having winning games.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I'm just saying, like, if they up their game a little bit, if they start becoming more out there and start making moves, they have a chance to win. Obviously, so as everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I do believe that's since they're not gonna be active, they're obviously gonna like be going far. So
Yeah, and honestly, like you are right. I will say, it does depend on what they do on the back end. I mean, Kingston and we played Cody Viver, and we actually didn't even have we had one merge, or we had one tribal. Not many people knew how we would play in a merge situation, and then we turned it up and we played hard. You know what I mean? Difference is we were still
mhm,
active, and we were still active, and those two really haven't been
Mhm.
all too active. We had deep social bonds and potential to actually make moves, but we only really played like the back half of the game. You know what I mean? And we had to show out because we knew that. So I do think it's possible, but I don't know if they really know how they're perceived, and that's the issue. You know what I mean?
but
But
that's a
one
good
person,
point. Yeah,
unless you have more to add on Kingston to these two, one
I was
player,
gonna say, um, like I said, we can kind of group these players together. I think depending on who you're gonna bring up, I think Chun Li and Keon will be in similar positions going to this merge, and I think Newbie and Panda will be in similar positions. So I just want to preface that real
I
quick.
definitely agree with the newbie and Panda. I think Chun Li can go further than Kian. But I don't know. Maybe you're right. But what I will say about Chun Li is he's a very polarizing player for me, at least, especially
Mm.
going into the merge. I think he's someone who can go far, but I also see he's someone who could be like the second boot of the pre-merge. And I wanted to actually ask you what your thoughts are of specifically just Chun Li.
Um, I think Chun Li would have been, and he should have been in a very good position coming into this merge. He should have been the, Kyle of the other side. But unfortunately, to mishaps with the Luna expel and with his tribe winning that final 12 tribal or tribal immunity, where he couldn't get his soon-to-be arch nemesis Keon out, kind of tanked his game for me. And I think going to this merge, having someone like Keon who potentially could go after him really soon because he thinks that Chun-Li went after him. Um, I don't think that's going to sit well with Chun-Li, especially when Keon has other allies to go to who can provide him safety.
Who do you think, if those two, if this results in like a head-to-head battle between those two, who do you think comes out on top?
I think Keon, because he has the backing of Marina and Kyle, and with Marina and Kyle comes OG Deriva. Who does Chun-Li have? His
Right,
OG Casco? They're not in power. They don't have numbers. So I think he will
right.
go home. But I do think Keon is the reason I grouped them two together is I think both of them will be early merge boots. I think both of them are just played so, out in the open, and I think they're less good at hiding how threatening they are, and I think people look at them as people to snipe early on. If you guys have nothing else to add for Keon and Chun-Li, we could head over to the last two, which is Panda and Newbie. And the reason I grouped these two together is because I view them as the two kind of followers in parentheses or in quotations of the OG Casco. I think Issa and Chun-Li are in much better spots than them going into the merge, and so I think early on, if an OG Casco were to be targeted, which I just said, I think will happen because I think Anthony and Keon will flip over to their OG Nauta, Marina and Kyle, and I think they will group in with OG Deriva. I think Nubian Panda, because of this, will be targeted early on.
I agree. I mean, there's not much more I can add to what you said, but I do definitely think there'll be, and obviously we're filming that, or we're recording this afterwards, and we know who goes home.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, even going into this merge, I thought they were going to be the two that would be targeted, and likely back to back. I just I just don't see a way where people are gonna stick their neck out for them, and that's the biggest thing. Is like, if we're gonna see any type of change in trajectory, it's gonna be when someone who has a lot of social prowess, his name is thrown out. Someone like an Issa or someone like Kyle or
Right.
Marina, like when their name is thrown out, then we'll see a trajectory of the vote, and then we'll see like things go back and forth and backfire, and we'll see some internal struggle from some players because, like, if Kyle's name is brought up and there's momentum, well, Kyle's also a big threat. So then we'll see those internal struggles of, do I vote Kyle? Do I not vote Kyle? And I think you won't see that with Newbie. And I know we, I know the spoiler to this, but um, even before the merge, it's just I never thought this is someone who's gonna, they're gonna stick their neck out for Newbie or Panda.
Mm-hmm. Toby, did you have anything to add at the end or no?
Honestly, like I don't think there's much to add. I do agree like with Chill with most points that he mentioned, which is like the fact that they are kind of seen both as followers, and yeah, like honestly, like I do believe like they are the type who would get like booted, but even if they got brought to the end, I don't believe like there are like people who would like vote for them. Like that's just how I see them right now going into this merge. I don't believe like they played as strong as the others, which is why like I just don't see a winner potential. Basically, like that's how I feel. Nothing much to add.
Yeah, I think we all brought great points, and I think that's a great place to end this episode off as we go into the merge. Do you guys have anything else to add last second or no?
No, I'm good. I think we covered a lot in
Nope.
this episode, actually.
All right, well,
This was fun.
I know, Toby, you should be a part of the next one.
I hope so. If I have the time, I will make sure to do so.
Yes, sir. Well, I guess we'll see you guys next episode if anyone's watching this. Yeah.